Hey, Jordan, thanks for joining us, man.
Great to be here.
Hey, Jordan, appreciate you taking the time. I know you're supposed to be super, super busy right now, so we appreciate you getting back in here and rescheduling with us because we were supposed to get you on a little while ago and things got a little crazy for everyone. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
One thing, if you can, Jordan, we always, for everybody who may not be familiar with you, we always like to start with your baseball story growing up, what your experience was like. Were you a late starter? Did you get started when you were 4 or 5 years old? What was your experience like?
Well, if I go back that far, I mean, I always was kind of drawn to baseball. I started when I was really young, played, did the whole like club ball, did, up to high school ball. It wasn't quite as structured as it is nowadays, but I went to a good high school, went to Rocky Mountain High School in Fort Collins, Colorado. We won a state championship there as a senior at the 5A level. Um, I played under a coach who is one of the best coaches I've ever had. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was a huge mentor and influence on me. I went to college at Metro State University in Denver. Up until this last year, I held the single season home run record there. Still second all time. So I had a really good college career and put up some power numbers. Didn't get drafted, so I played independent ball, and that wasn't something that was going to stick. I realized pretty quick I wasn't going to be a Major League Baseball player, but I knew I always wanted to coach. And I remember a coach I had in college who really gave me some confidence, and I loved his mentality and his energy. And I was like, I kind of want to do that. I feel like I can do that. And he got me excited to coach. And so I switched my major to kinesiology and nutrition. And when I got out of college, I became a certified strength coach. And the hitting part was always kind of came naturally to me, but I only knew how to coach myself.
Right.
So that was where when I started coaching high school baseball later that same year after I quit independent ball, I started kind of cutting my teeth a little bit, doing some individual lessons, and I really liked it. I really liked to have that effect on other people and be able to have some sort of long-term impact with young people. And so it's been a fun road. I also decided to kind of switch gears after that first year of coaching. I took a desk job in finance and I made good money. I didn't really like it. I started like dreading work every day. And I told my wife, who I just married, that we're going to move to California. I'm going to coach junior college baseball for no money. And so she was like super excited. No, she was excited to go to California. It was a great experience. It was at Santa Barbara City College, and it was awesome. I was around coaches that were much better coaches than I was. There was a huge learning curve, but it got me excited. I was like, oh, I need to catch up. I need to play some. I need to do all the research and reading that these guys are doing. And so it was awesome to be around guys who were just way ahead of the curve and were very modern with the way they thought about things, with a good blend of experience and everything they'd experienced, but they knew how to like really implement the new and to find a good balance. From after Santa Barbara City College, I went to University of Northern Colorado and was the hitting coach there. And I took the last couple of years off of college baseball. I had a little boy who's now 3, and now I have a 1-year-old daughter. And it was perfect timing. The Reds called. I had a few teams call, but the Reds were an awesome fit. I'm really excited about being with the Reds, and I can't believe I made it to professional baseball in a different way than I thought I was going to make it. So that's kind of my story.
Well, one thing I want to ask you, what was it looking back that made your high school coach so special? What did he do that kind of impacted you? Was he where you kind of got the idea that you wanted to be a coach and that seed was planted then? What was that connection that made him such a good coach for you?
I don't think he's the one that gave me the desire to coach, but I realize now how much he knew and like how much I needed to do just to be a better game manager, leader, timer of when I say things or how I say things. And he's really good at that. He just always had a really good feel for that. He really good game manager, really good. Like he's kind of he's a grinder. Like
Hmm.
he continuously does the same things the right way over and over again. Now there's different delivery, right? He may deliver a message differently over time, but he's so constant. And I
Right.
think, and I haven't been able to say that this way until recently, but he's so constant. And just everything he was doing was a, a player could know that Coach Bullock is a constant, and his message is going to be the same with maybe some different delivery. But what we want to do is constant. We know what he's going to expect from us, and he's the kind of guy you don't want to disappoint. And I think that's huge. And he's one of the most successful high school baseball coaches in Colorado. Um, so,
Well, I'm curious about this because you had made the comment that you were a good hitter, but you only knew how to teach yourself. And I kind of ran into that myself because I started hanging around with Tyler, and he's been a coach for years. And for me, I've only ever been a player. And then after I was done playing baseball, I played softball, and just trying to keep myself busy in
right.
some sort of way. But it wasn't until I started hanging out with him and really talking to a lot of the guys and ladies that we talk to on this show, that I really started to understand, oh, so that's what I'm doing. And this is how I break down. Like, how did you, what was that point like when you said, hey, I don't know how to teach it? What were some things that you started doing to really understand the swing so that you could teach what you were doing so well?
I think that there were certain players that very much like pushed back and who were like, I'm going to stay away from this guy. When you try to put a blanket over everybody, like this is the way it's done and these are the cues we're going to use, I think you start to get pushback and guys start to avoid you, or you can sense that, right? And so I think that was kind of the first indicator. I was kind of wondering why guys, there were a few guys that always continued to really really push back, and it was partly because of my personality at that moment in time. That's almost 10 years ago, and just coming fresh out of pro ball, I'm like, this is the way things are, and this is how you hit. Like this is how I hit. So this must be this must be the route that you need to take because that's what worked for me. And not everybody is, there. You have meatheads, you have people who are more analytical, you have people who are more cerebral. So you've got to mesh the way you deliver something with every personality type. And I think the big thing is you got to ask questions. And I wasn't really asking questions, right? It was more like this is what you need to do. And if you just start throwing that at people with no real understanding of where they're coming from, one, you haven't built a relationship, and two, there's no way there's no interaction happening then. You're just telling them, which is usually going to go in one ear and out the other because there's that lack of care. So does that answer your question?
It does, and actually, it brings up another question because the one thing when it comes to like sales, asking the right questions is what gets you to the buyer or the customer to trust you because you're asking questions based on their needs. So I'm curious,
Right.
what are some of those questions? It might be tough because I mean every player is different, but what are some of those common questions you would ask to kind of get them to buy into like, hey, I'm here to help you regardless of what your batting average and slugging percentage was last year. I'm here to help you. What are some of those questions?
I mean, yeah, that's pretty broad, but maybe we can do an example.
Okay.
So I was having a discussion today with a couple of the Reds hitters. Like, what are you thinking when you get into 3-2 count? So the question started out as how does pitch selection relate to doing damage? So and so as players start asking questions about, what that means and what I'm referring to, they start to kind of open up about like, yeah, when I get to 3-2, I don't feel comfortable. I feel like I need to do something. I need to create a result. I need to make something happen. And so asking questions like, well, why do you feel that way? Or do you feel anxious within a 2-2 count? What's the difference between 2-2 count? What's your mentality? Are you chasing batting average, right? Are you trying to get a hit? So asking questions that are really, I know what answer I want from them, but asking the question allows them to kind of take ownership. And a lot of times too, they'll throw in something you weren't expecting, and which is really eye opening. And a lot of times, at least I've discovered with some of the older guys, is they're going to give you something that's much more mentality related than it is physical. So
Now, one thing I want to ask is, how do you get guys into that do damage mindset? Is it, because this game, you can do a lot of things right. You can hit the ball on the button right at somebody a couple times and have a couple hard outs and have some bad luck. So how do you keep these hitters that you're working, even, maybe when you were in college, how do you keep some of them motivated to the process and not looking for wholesale changes in what they're doing? Because some guys are always constantly trying to, mess with this and mess with that. And, they're almost beating themselves before they ever get in the box.
right. I think with professional hitters, I don't see as much of the constant changing or the um, or the or the shift in mentality from day to day. It does occur, but if I can give you guys like high school and college player examples, I think that happens a lot more often.
Yeah.
So I would say one, your mental controls your physical. So if you can ensure that the mentality is there to do damage and they understand what that means and that they can trust themselves in those situations, I think that's a huge key. That's a huge starting point. From a physical standpoint, I believe that good movers are more adjustable. So if you can only hit one spot or you can only hit in one scenario, whether that's like only fastballs, we're lacking some sort of adjustability there, and usually we're lacking some athleticism as a hitter. So if I can teach guys to move better, that's actually going to spill over into timing, into adjustability. And, I define adjustability as being able to hit multiple pitch depths, pitch types. And so if I can teach a hitter to do those things, that's going to give him the confidence to do damage in all counts, because really we're not focused on the count as much as we are like just win the pitch. So I think giving them the freedom to hit, we want to hit, but understanding that if you make good decisions and you move really well, you're going to have options, is going to increase their confidence level and help them to buy into the idea of do damage. Because do damage it's a freedom concept, right? I want you to go hit. I want you to crush the base. Like, oh, okay, great, that's awesome. I'm not going to get mad at you when you strike out as long as you were following the plan, right? I think that there's a lot of freedom in that, and that's what we want to create is that level of trust.
Now, you probably don't see this much at the level you're at now with the Reds. But, we have a lot of college listeners, college, players or high school players looking to go to college, parents of players. We love asking questions like this just because there always seems to be some constants. Like when it comes to the swing, the key ingredients of a swing, I'm sure you have, you said movement, adjustability, things like that. But what are some of the things that you see that are most often missed at the younger level when it comes to teaching a kid to hit the ball correctly? I mean, movement might be the number one thing, but do you notice other things that, hey, why aren't these coaches teaching this earlier? And if they did, they'd be so much better. What are some of those things you see?
So really young athletes, I feel like teaching them like essential portions, essential segments of the swing, but really allowing them a lot of freedom to make mistakes is probably the thing that doesn't occur enough. I think people are very quick to be like, that's wrong. I need you to do it this way instead. When a lot of times us not talking is actually, they're going to find the adjustment on their own if the motivation is high. So if they love baseball and they really want to hit doubles, they want to hit the ball far, or they want to hit the ball hard, and they're motivated to do that, and you as the coach are controlling the environment or constraining the environment so that actually occurs, you can do very little talking and you can allow them to kind of self-discover. And what I don't want to do with a young person is give them a cue or a feel or a tool that they're not that they're not comfortable with, but they could actually make them worse. I'm very fearful of that. And I would say that at the younger levels, my number one piece of advice would be to let mistakes happen and like let the game play out more. So otherwise, when we try to interfere as coaches too young, and I'll give you an example. You know, Alex, I brought my wiffle bat too, just in case I needed to give an example.
Perfect.
The Alex Rodriguez video, right, where he's like saying like swing down, right? There is definitely validity to that, right? There is validity to that because A-Rod probably needed that, right? That was his feel. He needed to be a little more steep, right? But if you tell, and that was probably A-Rod figuring that out. I would assume A-Rod figured that out somewhere between like 16 and 22 years old, right? Like this is his, he can be a little more steep, right? I'm assuming that. I don't know. I doubt A-Rod was like 12 years old and be like, yeah, that's the spot, right? So when I tell a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old, hey, steep or down, it better be with a lot of good information. That better be the thing he needs, because what's an 8 to 12-year-old trying to do for his coach and his dad? He's trying to please him. He wants to do good, right? He's, you know what I'm saying, right? They
Yeah.
look up to like, is that right? Right? And they're like, did I do that right? Did I do that right? And their heads on a swivel because they're ensuring that they're pleasing the people around them. And really, it should be like, hey, what are you self-correcting so that you can hit balls here or hit balls hard? Or I think that's where the focus needs to be. And again, it's the same as if I tell a kid to swing up or through or hit ball hard or hit ball far. I mean, those are all cues, but they need to be at the right time. They need to be the right cue, right?
Right.
And I think there's a high possibility of us screwing someone up, especially when they're young, if they try to overemphasize something, especially before they've even hit puberty. That's kind of a scary thing.
And like the A-Rod thing, I almost like go back to like, if you have a kid who's doing nothing but hitting pop up, just that pattern that you just showed is almost one of those, like, you almost want to kind of tell them to do the opposite to try and even things back out a little bit out without giving too much direction that's going to completely confuse them. So, you know what I mean? Like, and the same thing with the kid hitting ground ball. You're just, hey, hit me a pop up. You're trying to hit one up in the air and try to get them to get through the zone a little different. So, I think what you're saying is fantastic. One thing I do want to ask, because I think this happens a lot with the younger level, and this kind of probably correlates to you a little bit now. All the voices. You have a high school coach, hitting coach. You went to college, had a coach. You get drafted and you get sent off to, rookie ball, and there's a coach, and then you get moved up to A ball and there's another coach. Oh, and then there's this hitting coordinator that does all the hitting to the program, to the whole, organization. What do you say to players, mom, dad, coach, everybody's in their head that have all these voices? What do you say to those people? Because I think that's probably one of the hardest things to get kids to focus on doing what they're good at, but they're so distracted by all the voices that are in their head a little bit. And when things go sideways, when things are going great, you got to block it all out. But what would you say to those people, and how do you get your players to kind of just focus on what they need to do?
Ultimately, you're your own best coach. So there has to be you're the only one up there in the box having to deal with the possibility of success and failure. So if you go up with a plan that is not something that you have a gut instinct for or that you believe is going to work, it's probably not going to work. If you have spent time with a coach and built the plan and gone through the uncomfortable stages and it's coming out better, that's different. But ultimately, you're your own best coach. If you run into a coach that, it's not a good fit, it's not the stuff I think is correct, I believe you should still listen. You kind of don't know where you're going to find good stuff, right? You just don't know. And a lot of times good coaches are planting seeds that initially don't sound like something that would be a fit for you. And then all of a sudden a year or two down the road, you're like, oh my gosh, that's what he was saying. That's what now I get it. And so it's hard. It's important that you listen. It's important that you try your best to think critically about, okay, what was said, and is that actually of value? Is that actually helpful for me? Because you'll run across coaches that plant seeds that actually you're going to end up wanting to know that information down the road. It's going to make sense. And you run into coaches that's not a piece of information that I need. And you'll throw that stuff out. I think for a young person, it's a lot harder to know that stuff. But I do believe that having lots of coaches is more of a benefit, because it's like a big buffet of information.
Right.
But you can really only fill your plate with a few of those entrees, a few of those pieces of food. So I think the more you sift through stuff, ultimately the better off you're going to be. As long as you sift, right? You can't take the whole buffet. Like, you have to figure out what goes on the plate.
I love that. The buffet analogy with the entrees, that's really good. Perfect way of saying it. Before we get into talking more about what's going on now with you with the Reds, you're talking about all these nuggets of information that you can get. I'm saying nuggets, so nuggets from the buffet. All these information you can get from all these different coaches. I'm curious. You played for a long time, and now you're coaching. But through that playing time, you were number one in hitting home runs at your college, and it just recently became number two. But what pieces of information do you remember that really changed the way you hit the ball? Like, what do you remember that coach? Do you remember the information you got where you were just like, this makes sense, I got it now?
Right. Yes. High school was hit the ball hard every time. And I figured, so that was from a coach. So I was like, oh, that makes sense. Why am I not doing that? Right. I need to hit the ball hard. And then another one in high school is kind of from myself. I realized, hey, I really have a tendency to lunge forward. I see the ball well or something, because I always just want to go get it. And the more I just kind of like continue to sit back, the better it came out. So that was a thing I discovered myself. In college, my sophomore year, I had a coach who just like filled me up with confidence. He's like, dude, you're going to smash. But he goes, I never want you to hit it. You're so slow. I never want you to hit a ground ball ever again. So I was like, okay. He's like,
So
you're
much
not going to be, yeah, right. It was like the crap sandwich, which is like another sales technique, right?
Right.
He was like, hey man, you're a great hitter. You're a terrible runner, but we're going to do this. Right. So, but it made a ton of sense. I was like, you're right. I'm not going to beat ground balls out to short and second. So why would I ever swing at a pitch down in the zone? I was a better hitter up. So if I swung down, it ended up being a ground ball, or I'd kind of mishit it or flare it. So I knew I needed to work up in the zone. And some hitters are completely the opposite, right?
Right.
They do a better job hunting the ball kind of mid-thigh and down. So he was like, you're going to hit the ball in the air. You're going to try to hit home runs. I want you to hit as many home runs as you can. It doesn't matter whether it's 2 strikes, no strike, like it's all counts. Nothing changes your mentality. And I loved it. And his energy was so good. I wanted to do good for him because he just gave me so much confidence. And so I wanted to have that impact on other people. But, and the stuff he taught mechanically was kind of weird. I loved the drills we did. And like thinking back, the drills we did were awesome. We did a lot of like one hand stuff, back knee stuff, a lot of swing path stuff. Just thinking about using my whole body to get behind the ball. Like he said really good stuff. I don't know how much he really understood mechanics or like what really happens in the swing, but it really didn't matter. He had set up the environment from a mentality standpoint and from a drill standpoint that was just right for me. And
Jordan,
I had three different coaches in college, and he was probably the most impactful personally.
if you can, Jordan, since you got your wiffle ball bat there, I just loved what you said about getting your whole body behind the ball. Can you get that bat and show our viewers, people listening this on the podcast will be wondering what's happening, but can you show an example of that with your wiffle ball bat? Because I love that saying, because I think it's something that when kids understand what you mean and people see it, a light bulb can come on.
Right. Yeah. So I'll do my best visual I can here. I think what he was trying to say and what I interpreted as was I want to try to work. I'm going to like be behind. So I think what it ended up doing was working me more on this plane. I was trying to cover them better. That way I could hit the ball deeper. So for me, I'm not a great pull side guy. So what I had to do to hit the ball pull side well was to like actually catch it a little deeper. I wasn't going to get extended pull side unless it was off speed. So if I was good deep, then I could catch the ball a little deeper and still hit for power because I was still using all my energy. So whereas I guess the opposite would be if I was not hitting behind the ball, my spine would be kind of like forward, if that makes sense, right? That would not be an example of like working behind the ball. But if my body was behind the ball, I was turning behind the ball, you notice what happens with my swing pass, right? Whereas if I'm, over the ball or, I wouldn't say this is behind. I would say this is under, right?
Right.
So finding a way to be behind and turn behind, made sense. He didn't call it turn behind, but I think that's what I call it now, is figuring out how to like turn behind the baseball and work behind the baseball. Some guys are really good back here and we don't worry about that. But guys who are bad back here, I mean, that's a really powerful cue for some of those people is to work behind, turn behind. So yeah, that made sense to me. I was always a very handsy hitter, so thinking about my body a little more, I was like, oh yeah, I need to use my body a little more. I'm not a small person. I need to find a way to like utilize my levers. So
real quick, I want to ask a couple things here. Fact or fiction? Hands to the ball, knob to the ball.
I would say it's fiction in the sense that it doesn't occur that way biomechanically, right? So if I'm watching video, the hands are not going to skip ahead of everything else to go hit. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
Now, would I say it's wrong to think that way? Not if it helps a guy. Not if it helps a guy to actually make the sequence happen correctly. So if I'm telling someone hands to the ball and all of a sudden they are smashing the barrels in the zone a long time, they're an adjustable hitter, then that's awesome. I think that's very helpful. I think it makes sense that a hitter would be very much focused on his hands. A fifth of your motor cortex in your brain is devoted solely to the nerves in your fingertips and your feet. So it would make a ton of sense that it's very important to feel what's going on here and in the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you talk about like historically the last 50 years of hitting mechanics, what are the things that the old school guys say and the new school guy, I don't like to use that term, but what are the constants, right? what did Cal Ripken do every day? He like changes posture, right? He
Right.
changes positioning with the ground, because my theory is that the way he interacted with the ground probably like, it feels better to do this today, right? Oh, this feels better. Posture dictates function. So if I'm in the ground differently, I might be able to compensate differently. Whereas, there's a reason why people mess with grips on the bat so much, right? Like, is this the right way? Is this the right way? Is more tension good? Is less tension good? Is tension in these fingers good? Is tension in my middle fingers good, right? Do I start with my fingers off the bat? There's a reason why all this stuff becomes so important, is because this is the thing we use to hit the ball, is the bat, and thus the barrel. So if stuff feels poor right here, we're probably not going to have a good feedback loop. So
Gary Sheffield must have had all those nerves going to his hands and none to his feet.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, no.
one other thing that squish the bug. What do you what do you say about that one?
Man. Again, I think that's kind of, to me, I'm not going to teach that at all with a young person, because it just doesn't seem to ever. I'm always like, when I say something, what's the possible reward of me saying that thing? And for me, squish the bug is such a low value, not bang for your buck type cue, that I just don't use it. Maybe it's right for 1 in 100 guys, but I'm looking for the thing that's the lowest hanging fruit and the biggest bang for your buck, and that has the possibility of fixing or cleaning up 3 or 4 other things, like the load or the starting posture or the launch position, or barrel coverage. I'm looking at things that will actually clean up that are causes, rather than kind of secondary things like how well you're turning your back foot. I just think that would definitely be very much a myth. I would steer very clear of that cue.
Yeah, and I was just trying to think of some common ones that I know that, like, no matter what,
that's a great one.
People are gonna say these things, and most of the coaches say it with good intentions. It just
Right,
I don't know
exactly.
what the end results mean, and I think social media is so ugly anyway for the most part, right? And like, people get so wrapped up in this terminology and that terminology, and this kid moves that way, and this is wrong because he's doing that, but the kid hits 350. Yeah, I mean, like, it's just so weird, you know what I mean? So I get where all of these sayings have a purpose in them, and I love what you're saying about bang for your buck and those things. One thing I want to ask you too about is launch angle. What do you say? Because it's ruining the game. This is destroying baseball. Da 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 da. You can go on and on. What do you say?
I think it's just poorly termed. I think what people are trying to say is that the idea of sacrificing ball and play and overall action and speed of the game for just hunting ways to hit home runs, I think that's what people are really trying to say. I think that is more about what it's about. It is poorly termed as launch angle culture or launch angle swing.
Right.
Unfortunately, launch angle is just a way that it's just a metric that we use to evaluate what a batted ball is doing, and it combined with exit velocity and direction, we can make some good assumptions about what a hitter is doing. So it's a very powerful tool for us as coaches. It's fun for fans to see because it's just interesting to know all those details about a batted ball, but it's just a poorly termed way to describe people who are it's a poorly termed way to describe the way the game is being played and the way that the more modern way of offensive strategy is showing up on the field.
Right.
It's the best explanation I've honestly heard.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
No, that's great.
I wanted to ask you about this, Jordan. We had talked about it just shortly right before we started recording here. It's fitting today that we're talking to you on the what was supposed to be opening day. I got my Orioles gear on right now because I was looking forward to watching them. It's my birthday as well, so it was
Happy birthday.
perfect. Thank you. It was perfect. So I was thinking this is going to be great. Well, it didn't turn out the way we wanted to because of this COVID-19 craziness. So how has it impacted you and your team? And what are some of the things you're able to do to keep your team moving in the right direction and staying motivated and really focusing on things? I know you said you were talking to some players earlier, but what's it done for you? What's it done for your team? And what are you doing to keep everybody on board?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much information I'm allowed to give right now about what we're doing, but
Right.
we're doing a really good job right now of keeping the players engaged, and our organization is really, really people driven. And I feel like at least our hitting unit and the development staff are trying really hard to kind of keep things synergized. I would equate it to, I played a lot of snowed out games and a lot of games where I was like, there is no way we are playing today. And then we freaking shovel the field and we're playing at 3:30 in the afternoon after shoveling snow for 6 hours. That's kind of what we're trying to do. Is we don't know anything because this is a fluid situation, but we are going to try to be the best prepared team when we got to go play. The best prepared organization when we got to go back and play. So
Now,
that's the mentality we're trying to keep.
how long, when they say, "Yep, all's good, let's get back at it," how long do you think it's going to take for you as a coach and the coaching staff, and obviously the big league club's probably going to get priority, 40-man roster guys will get priority, but how long will it take to get guys, obviously, hopefully they're working at home, pitchers, hitters doing what they can, but how long do you realistically think that it's going to take, with spring training, the back half of it being wiped out, to really get guys back going? And what impacts are you think that's going to have once the season does get started?
I think this is a totally unique situation. Whereas, in the off season, guys are training because they have access to training, and things aren't necessarily too different. But now, when people can't go outside and can't use their facilities and can't use community cages or community spaces to play catch, or even, you're even maybe a little scared to go play catch with the same baseball with somebody. I mean, that's the situation you're in. It changes everything. So it's really hard to say how well prepared everybody can be. However, everyone's going to be kind of on the same playing field when it comes back. So I know that MLB is really pushing hard I think, I don't know if it's MLB, the ownership group is pushing to have spring training in some fashion to ramp up arms. And so I think that will help our hitters too. I think it's probably the main concern would be to ramp up arms, like position players too, like getting arms back to normal, throwing across the diamond. And I think that's probably where the biggest curve is going to come, is making sure arms are healthy and that we don't see a bunch of injuries. And yeah,
and baseball's unique too. In a way, you got guys from several different countries coming in from all over the world. In a way, it's not like the NBA had all their guys here traveling around the United States playing games, playing NHL the same way. Maybe went to Canada. You got guys coming from everywhere, showing all up at once. I mean, that's kind of a different thing than all these other sports are dealing with too. Yeah, I mean, I would think that throws another monkey wrench kind of into the whole plan of getting guys back going.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm like hoping for something to come out that says what the next move is going to be. I know MLB is trying hard to make it happen like that, so that all the organizations can move in a very similar manner. But man, it's so fluid right now. It's who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm just praying for it to be sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Well, on that note there, I mean, I just heard something today that there was the talk of, hey, we can get 162 games in. We'll have the last game of the World Series on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, you just want to get there in there and play, regardless of how many games.
Right.
But what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think it's going to be a shortened season? Would you rather have a shortened season? Would you want to play? Do you think teams want to play in December?
I honestly, I don't think that changes anything. I do think that it's going to be colder, but I really think that guys want to play baseball,
Yeah.
and guys want to be paid to pay.
Oh
Like
yeah.
ultimately,
Yeah.
everybody wants to be paid like normal. So I don't think that a shortened season is preferable at this point. I think that I think that everybody wants to do their thing and have it be as close to the most real and historically correct way to play a season as possible. And yeah, that's my feel. I want to play my full season. I'm excited to be here. I'm like grateful to
Yeah.
have made it to been in got to be in professional baseball. I want to do it right. I want to have the whole thing be like normal, and it's not going to be normal at this point. But if I don't care if I'm playing late into the fall, if that's what we have to do.
Now, if you can, Jordan, what is your exact role and responsibilities in the Reds organization for those who may not know?
So I'm a minor league hitting coach. So I am going to be supposed to be stationed in Billings, Montana, the Billings Mustangs hitting coach, which is
It'll be cold in July.
yeah, right. Yeah. It's the rookie advanced affiliate for the Reds.
Nice.
Yep. So
How much, in the spring, how much relationship building were you able to do with your team? I mean, I know it wasn't a lot of time, and I don't know how soon you got to meet people, and if
yeah.
you got to meet everybody. But I'm just curious, how much relationship building were you able to do?
Well, we did a really cool structure this year, and we had lots of people there early. And I got to be there for 3.5 weeks. And some coaches had just showed up the day we decided to bang everything. So I was very fortunate to have had players and even get to coach on at my affiliate. And so I do feel lucky that way. I actually showed up February. I was doing spring training activities on February 15th. So I was already out there on the field and had gotten a taste of it. And so, I'm bummed because I miss those days. That was so much fun. But I got to experience that a little bit and build some relationships with some of the players, and which now I can talk to them over the phone and through Zoom or whatever. So, yeah.
That's what I wanted to ask. So, are you doing, like video conferences with 3-4 hitters at a time? Is it one-on-one? Did the organization kind of set up a plan of, we want you guys doing this if you can, and those types of things?
Yeah, we have a structured way we're doing something like that, and it's been really. We just kind of started it this last week, but it's been really effective, and it's just another way for us to continue educating our hitters and players. Um, so yeah, it's
Now,
been really good.
one thing I want to ask too is, what's the communication like with you with the AA hitting coach and AAA, as the minor league hitting coordinator? What's that relationship like amongst you guys as coaches?
The hitting core, we talk all the time. We're pretty integrated because we want there to be the pillars that we all work off of. We want our individual voices, to all come out, and our delivery to be, personalized, and for us to build our relationships with players and get to coach the way we know how to coach, with the idea that this is our Reds offensive philosophy. This is what we want to do. This is the umbrella of what we're going to work.
I wanted to. This is kind of breaking it away from the Reds right now, but I wanted you to talk about a little bit about rounding third baseball performance. Um, you got a lot of things going on there, and I'm just curious. For those that are listening, for people that want to do work and they have the ability to do it from home, but they're just looking for a good online coach. How much online coaching do you do with your company, and what's that looking like right now? Are you guys pretty busy?
So I have never done a lot of online coaching, not because I don't like it, but because I've never felt like I can put the quality I want out there yet.
Hmm.
And so I've actually structured a whole new subscription service, which is really cool. Like a drill library, um, philosophy and approach and game mentality, fitness, nutrition, all in one place. And I'm going to include some swing analysis service and in like one-on-one interaction stuff, all included in that service. And so I wanted to make sure that there was like a price point and structure that was very fair so that more people could access it.
Right.
And so that's what I'm working on right now. I'm going to try to have it done by the end of April. We've already got it started, but I just never, I had done Skype training and FaceTime training in the past, and it's good, but it's nothing like the in-person stuff. Because my space is so awesome. The being around other guys and competing against other guys, you cannot get that in a one-on-one Skype and FaceTime call. It's just not going to happen. But what I realized too is they're just different services. So when I decided to actually do the subscription service and the online portion, I want it to be really good. So I'm pretty excited about it. So that is something to look out for. I'm excited about that. It's going to be a high quality service that you can access on your own, and it's very much more budget friendly than in-person training is as well.
Right.
Awesome. We've asked a ton of questions. Were there any topics you wanted to talk about before we wind down and ask the last couple questions?
I mean, I can talk about hitting all day. So your biggest concern would be if you get me on a topic and then you can't get me off the video. So I don't want to do that.
well, here you go. Here's a good way to ask it, so you can pick something. Biggest piece of advice you can give young players, parents, and coaches right now about the game of baseball?
In its current state?
Well, yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, right? Why not? And whether it's they're just waiting for that time to play, or if they got time sitting at home, things to work on, whatever you think.
Yeah. Okay. I got a couple of things. So that I think the number one thing would be you only have so much time. You are, whether you just got awarded an extra year of eligibility or not, you don't get another year of age inside under 40 years old. Like, you don't get a magic year of not aging. You still have a timeline and a clock that you're awarded in this life. So you need to use every opportunity to continue to get yourself better. By the time you're a senior in high school, most guys' careers are 80% over. So it's very important that you use each year and each opportunity to get better. For example, if you are only lifting weights for 6 months out of the year, you are essentially losing a year of development every 2 years.
Ooh.
So that's a really important piece, and that's just on the weightlifting or the strength and conditioning side. Another piece of advice I'd have is most guys are about 8 to 16 weeks away from drastically changing their careers. What happens with a lot of young people is they don't commit to something consistently for that time. It's kind of like they're kind of good for a week or two and then they fall off. They're kind of good for a week or two and they fall off. But if you actually stuck to something for 4 to 5 days a week and you hit every day 4 to 5 days a week for 4 months, like you would drastically change the person that you are. Sorry, the player that you are, and possibly the person you are. But I think that people don't realize they're actually a very short timeline away from making the changes they want. but you got to be really consistent, and you got to be okay with being bored sometimes.
Love it. That's perfect.
That's awesome. I mean, and you're probably right. If you take that same approach, you say about just changing the hitter, you could change who you are as a person if you changed your eating habits or, your workout routine or any of those things.
Discipline.
Just discipline.
Right.
I mean, and you're 100% right in that. One thing I do want to ask, and you kind of brought up, how important is strength training and nutrition at the higher levels of the game? And I mean, it's something that, travel ball kids are eating from the concession stand, hot dogs, pizza between games, and it's not really structured. But as you get older, how important is strength training and nutrition?
I would say if you're older and you're not doing it, like, you're going to definitely fall behind. I would say it's arguably more important when guys are younger. I mean, you have to do it when you're older. You don't have a choice when you're a professional and college baseball player, because you will fall apart, and you will make noticeable declines. Like, you have to do it to stay healthy. You have to do it to stay strong. The people who don't are your outliers. Like Derek Jeter didn't really lift weights. Like, he didn't do anything until he showed up for spring training. You can't do that. Like, he's Derek Jeter. He did that, but that's not a good plan for most people. I would say on the strength conditioning for the younger people, nobody wants to do it because it makes you sore and it kind of sucks, right? But the people who do it make the most giant leaps, right? Who gets picked to be on travel ball teams? The most physical kids. Who gets picked to be on, high level high school teams, varsity and JV, when they're freshman and sophomore? The more physical kids. Are they necessarily the best ball players? Are they going to blossom to be the best ball players? You could argue that no, they're not. How many POs do you see that get stuck as POs, pitchers only, when they're 16 and 17 years old, because they haven't hit a growth spurt yet? They haven't turned into that 19-year-old, 20-year-old beast of a man that they were, or woman that they were going to be, right? They haven't kind of peaked yet. So I think we would see it more often with young men than young women, just because of differences there. But I think that's a huge piece. Like, strength conditioning will literally change your genetics, and will give you a chance to be ahead of where you would be had you not done it. Not to mention the benefit you get from coordination and fluidity of movement. So.
Excellent. Good.
If you could tell your younger self anything, what would you tell yourself? Your 13 to 15-year-old self, what would you go back and say?
I think that I would say, if you have a bad game, it's going to be okay, man. You live in a first world country where your mom and dad are going to feed you dinner. I think sometimes you get wrapped up in, like, oh my gosh, if I do terrible, I will never make it to college baseball. I will never make it to my goals. And that's what I always wanted. But sometimes you get so centered around the possibility of something not happen, or the result itself, that you forget, like, hey, if I don't make it in baseball, is it a big deal? No, it's okay. I'm still a good person. I can still do things in this world that are impactful. And just kind of disconnecting from that baseball is your identity, rather than, instead of focus on, hey, baseball is fun and I enjoy it, and I want to do it for as long as possible, and I have the fortitude to overcome anything that's hard. There's a lot more tough things in the world that don't over for.
That's excellent. I was thinking about that when you were talking about that. I was like, perfect example. All right. I'm sure you wanted to play for a major league team, and it didn't pan out. But now you're professionally coaching for a major league organization. So, although you may not make it as a player, you could touch thousands of people's lives just by sticking to what you love with baseball and coaching someone. I think that's pretty awesome. That's a dream come true. I mean, I'm sure you would have loved to have played in the major leagues, but I mean, this is pretty awesome, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. You just don't know. Yeah. You don't know.
Yeah.
But you don't know, always bet on yourself. Like, just keep going. If you are confident about something, if you have a passion for something, continue just pushing.
What would be some of your goals, Jordan?
But
What would be some of your goals in the next 3 to 5 years? You know, you got a family, children already. What would be some of your professional goals that you'd like to achieve?
I mean, I want to move up in professional baseball. I really do. Not at the expense of me doing a good job with where I'm at, though. So I think if 5 years from now, if I can do a great job every year and get my hitters better, and look back at the last 5 years and think about all the people I've impacted and the hitters I've actually helped, been a part of their journey onto big league baseball, I think I'd be really satisfied. I'm not going to lie and say I don't want to be a major league hitting coach or a hitting coordinator, because I'd be lying, but not at the expense of like just being really good at what I'm doing at this moment. So.
Excellent. Now, we like to ask this question because this podcast has really connected us and connected our listeners to people with great stories and great knowledge about the game, whether it be softball or baseball. If you could recommend anybody to have on this show to bring value to our listeners every single week, that has a good story, has a good mindset when it comes to the game, who would that person be?
I would say, I mean, our hitting coordinator, CJ Gilman, he's awesome. He's a great personality. I think that he has a really good feel for hitting in the broadest sense. I think he understands the game aspect, the strategy aspect, the the movement component, the mechanics. I think he has a really good feel for all that, and he's a great communicator. He communicates awesome with guys. So I think if there's anybody you could have here, it'd be CJ. He's a busy guy. So
I'm sure.
I would love to, I'd hope you can get him on here. I would say one other person too that's really good is actually on another podcast. Joey Kuna with the Farm System podcast. Not he actually he works at 108 Performance. He's a fun guy and very sharp. Young guy, but extremely sharp. And he's a good guy too. But yeah, those would probably be two good recommendations for you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, we had Eugene on from 108 who
Okay. Yeah.
while back. Good guys, good stuff.
Yeah.
No. Appreciate it. Good recommendations. We'll have to see if we make it happen, especially this time when people are, little more time than normal. But
yeah, for sure.
Jordan, this has been great. For anybody who wants to follow along, I'm sure you'll be probably posting a bunch of stuff once the season gets going and stuff like that. If people want to follow along with what you're doing with Rounding Third performance and what you're going to be doing with the Reds, where can people find you on social media and your website?
Yep. Rounding3.com. And then my Twitter handle is @hitting4power. That's probably the best place to find me. And then on Instagram is @roundingthirdbp. Those are my best places to reach me.
Awesome, Jordan. I got one more question for you. It's my one of my favorite questions because I feel like music tells a lot about the person. So, if you had one at bat in a major league game, what song would you use as your walk-up song to the plate?
I think I sent it over to you guys, and now I don't even remember the title of it.
Hold on, we be out here.
I think it's "Lose Your Love" by The Outfield.
Yes, sir.
That song's so fantastic. That song is
Charlie Blackmon with the Rockies has it, and like the stadium just goes wild, and it's just fun. And I'd want to pick a song that made me feel kind of loose, and that I would, that kind of represented my personality more than if I chose like a hardcore rap or metal song, which that's what I want to work out to, but probably not what I want to hit to.
That's awesome, man. Jordan, we really appreciate you taking the time and talking with us.